have wrapped up my virtual Sundance experience. A lot of my peers have already wrapped up their in-person experience, so I thought it would be fun to do a nice little recap video about the movies I saw at Sundance. I also just want to say, on a personal note, I really love and appreciate the virtual option Sundance gives. It's just a great way to make this festival more accessible for critics and just regular moviegoers who may not have the option to up and go in person. I saw 9 movies this year and I did those in 3 days. The window was smaller than years previous and I didn't realize that, so I overdid it a little bit, but we did it. I figured I'd start with my lowest rated and work my way up to my favorite and just give you a quick overview of what I thought of these movies. If there are any movies that sound interesting that you want me to dive deeper on, please let me know in the comments and I will be happy to throw together a video at some point and dive deeper into these films. I saw a lot of really good ones that I do plan to unpack more thoroughly down the road. Starting off, we've got Bubble and Squeak. Bubble and Squeak is about a pair of newlyweds who are accused of smuggling cabbages into a nation where cabbages are banned. They must confront the fragility of their new marriage while on the run for their lives. I was pulled to this film because I love Himesh Patel, Sarah Goldberg is in it, Matt Berry from What We Do in the Shadows is in it, and I love Steven Yeun. Dave Franco also shows up in this. Like, it's a stacked cast. And that premise is silly, but I was like, you know what? I could go for some absurdist film. I could dive in. Fortunately, I just think Bubble and Squeak really fails in terms of its execution. Trying to present this absurdist political tale and also like dive into like this new marriage, but it doesn't really do any of that clearly. It feels like some of the actors, specifically Sarah Goldberg, are kind of struggling with the tone. It feels like they're going for a sort of Yorgos Lanthimos kind of vibe, but it feels like some people are struggling with that. And the people who are kind of getting it then just feel like they're in a different movie. I also just think you have some of these great talents that are really underused. I will say though, Steven Yeun shows up at the beginning and does this fun little character, and I just want to reiterate something I've been saying. I think he is just a terrific actor. Like, he really loses himself in his roles, and this was kind of cool to see him in this capacity, even though the movie wasn't so great. I ended up giving Bubble and Squeak 1.5 stars. It really just did not work for me. Next up, we've got Bunnlovr. Bunnlovr is about a Chinese-American cam girl who is struggling to navigate an increasingly toxic relationship with one of her clients while attempting to rekindle her relationship with her dying estranged father. It's a feature debut from Katarina Zhu, who also wrote and stars in this. I think she's got a really great directorial eye. She does like really cool things that make the movie feel very intimate and very up close and personal. I really love the way she captures some of these moments. She shows a lot of promise as a director, and I think she is really good as a performer as well. I just don't think this movie gives us a lot to latch on to. A lot of the threads of the story kind of feel like they're competing for our attention. The thread with her client from the cam website feels like a totally different movie than her trying to rekindle her relationship with her father, and they never intersect. So it just kind of ends up feeling a bit disjointed. I also just think the characters are kind of thinly written. We have some really interesting ideas presented, but they aren't explored in a deep way, for me anyway. I ended up giving this 2.5 out of 5 stars. I think there's a lot of promise from Katarina Zhu as an artist. I'm really excited to see more from her. It just kind of fell a little flat in terms of its execution, but it's all there. It's got all of the pieces. Next, we've got Sukkwan Island. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Sukkwan Island is about a young boy named Roy who is trying to reconnect with his estranged father, and he agrees to spend a year of adventure on a remote island cabin in the Norwegian fjords. It starts as a chance to rebuild their relationship, and it quickly kind of just descends into this ultimate survival test as they kind of confront the realities of the environment and their relationship. This movie stars Swan Arlaud. You may know him as the hot lawyer from Anatomy of a Fall. So that immediately drew me in. I was really excited to see him in a leading capacity. This movie also stars Woody Norman. You may know him from Come On, Come On. Both of them are really great. They are giving some really great layered performances. They're really sinking their teeth into these roles and this relationship. you can really feel the history and the pain and the hope kind of coursing between the two of them. However, it does start to feel a bit repetitive. We kind of just start retreading the same things over and over, and it does feel like we are stretching a shorter film to fill 2 hours. This movie clocked in at roughly about an hour 52 minutes, and I really feel like we could have made this like a tight 90, maybe even 80 minutes, you know? It does feel like two different movies sewn together. I think the transition into the second half does feel natural. It doesn't feel very jarring. Like I said, everything kind of feels so dragged out. So by the time I was getting into the second half, I was kind of like, please let it be over. Maybe that's intentional. It really puts you in the shoes of this poor son. It's based on a short story, so you can really feel them trying to pad it out. I was shocked to learn the basis for the short story. That was jarring to learn at the very end of the movie. I definitely think it's interesting. It's exploring some interesting ideas, but I was kind of exhausted by it, and not in like an impactful way. I ended up giving it 3 stars though. I think it's gorgeously shot, well performed, and it is really good at weaving in the tension. It just kind of loses its way and feels a bit aimless. Next up, I've got The Things You Kill. The Things You Kill is about a professor named Ali who is haunted by the suspicious death of his mother, and he coerces an enigmatic gardener to execute a cold-blooded act of vengeance. According to the logline, as long-buried family secrets resurface, the police tighten their noose and doubts begin eroding his conscience, and Ali has no choice but to look into the abyss of his own soul. So I'm not gonna lie, I kind of need someone to explain that movie to me like I'm 5 years old. I don't want to spoil anything, but it makes a decision with its visual storytelling that is very confusing, and I am still sitting with it and not quite sure what to make of it or how to decipher that choice. And it's a big choice. It takes up a big chunk of the movie. And I can't lie, it really pulled me out of it. And I just kind of spent a lot of that middle piece of the movie trying to figure out why and what happened instead of going along with it. That being said, I think the middle is bookended with some really solid work. I think it does a great job at laying the groundwork and building this tension. And that ending left chills running through my body. I think that end is very haunting and chilling, and I think it does what it needs to do. Also, a really great leading performance from Ekin Koch. He's just awesome in this. It's a really well thought out arc, and he kind of just slowly unfurls this character as the movie goes on. Really great stuff. Visually great too, well directed. I was very in. I just really did not get what the middle was going for, and I think I need someone smarter than me to unpack it with me. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I think it's a really well-made movie, and I don't think the decision that baffled me is stupid or pointless. I really just think it went over my head, and I'm hoping I can appreciate it as I unpack it more. It felt intentional, and it didn't feel thrown in just for the sake of doing something weird. I just wish I got it. Next up, I've got Where the Wind Comes From. This is about Alyssa, a rebellious 19-year-old, and her friend Medi, a shy and introverted 23-year-old, and they use their imagination to escape their unpromising reality. They end up discovering an art contest that may allow them the opportunity to leave their old lives behind, so they take a road trip to participate. I think this movie is a really sweet coming of age movie. It really is a nice buddy road movie. I loved the central dynamic. It's very believable, very real. I think they play off of each other so well. And there's some exciting visual choices being made that really let us into the head of Alyssa, our main character. I really loved those decisions. I don't think these characters get a lot of room to breathe in these moments. I think any moment we do have is cut a bit short, or it's very rushed, especially the ending. That ending is so very rushed. It left me a little disappointed. I also felt like for a movie that does have some really interesting visual vocabulary, that is trying things, it really relied a lot on the buddy road movie tropes. Like, we had one too many traveling montages, one too many needle drops. I just think it kind of struggled with its vision. It relied a little bit on formula, but then it was doing really exciting things, but then it would kind of get a little skittish and go back to formula. That being said though, I really did enjoy my time with this movie. I ended up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think it's a really exciting voice. I think it's an exciting visual eye, and the performances are really winning and lovely. Next up, we've got Plainclothes. Plainclothes is about a promising undercover officer assigned to lure and arrest gay men, and he ends up defying professional orders when he falls in love with one of his targets. The officer is played by Tom Blythe from the Hunger Games prequel, and Russell Tovey plays the target. I really liked this movie. This movie really exceeded my expectations. I think it's an anxiety-laced collision of pleasure and pain, and Tom Blythe gives a star-making performance. I know everyone kind of made him White Boy of the Month after Hunger Games, but this is really showing off him as an actor, and I think people need to jump on him now before he blows up. There's so many beautiful moments where we watch this pleasure emerge from exploring your identity and allowing your identity to authentically flow, clashing with the pleasure that comes from it in the midst of the culture they're in. There's a lot of exciting visual and editing choices that really put you into this observational voyeuristic state. Sometimes it feels a little on the nose, but I didn't mind it. It brings the past and present together kind of beautifully. We're taking regular footage with security footage and camcorder footage, and it's blending in a really cool electric way. I think the sound design is really smart, and it really puts us in this mindset of this officer who has to be super observational, and we're really hypersensitive to things. Thought that was great. And I just love the way it interrogates shame and how shame will haunt us and it will follow us no matter how much distance we have from it. I think it dips energetically here and there, but overall the tension manages to carry through and it builds all the way to this explosive finale. And I just was really impressed. I really liked this. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Also, could not believe it was a directorial debut. Carmen Emmy has such a command of the form already. It's just marvelous. I was so excited when I learned that. Next up, we've got Twinless. You may have heard about Twinless because it was making waves on Twitter because someone decided to share a fun little GIF and get it taken down off the virtual portal. I managed to finish watching this less than an hour before it got plucked from the portal. I got very lucky. Twinless is about 2 young men who meet in a twin bereavement support group and form an unlikely bromance. It's an odd little gem of a movie that really shouldn't work, but thanks to the career best performance we're getting from Dylan O'Brien, it really soars. He's always been great. He's one of those people who shows up on the screen and I know he's going to be okay. He's going to deliver. But somehow James Sweeney, who wrote, directed, and starred opposite Dylan O'Brien, managed to tap into everything Dylan O'Brien could offer. It feels like the material really understands the well of star power they have in Dylan O'Brien and allows him to shine. The movie continuously oscillates between melancholia and just silly goose times. I think that's why Dylan O'Brien shines. He really gets the dark humor, but also is really selling the hell out of these deeply sad scenes. And what's so impressive about Sweeney as a writer is that neither kind of tonally trumps the other. Dark humor plays really well with the navigation of grief and loneliness, but he also just allows us to sit in those uncomfortable sad moments. Sweeney gives a great performance that really complements Dylan O'Brien's. I think they're such an unlikely duo and that plays really well. But what impressed me more is I think he really showed himself as an artist to watch behind the camera. He does some really cool choices directorially, and that script is really sharp for the most part. I loved this. This was so delightful. It kind of always kept me guessing. I wouldn't look further into plot details beyond the log line because it is surprising, and I think it does play with your expectations and flip it on its head. It's a really, like I said, weird little gem that I'm excited for people to see. That was another 4-star for me. Next up, we've got Cactus Pears, another feature directorial debut, this time from Rohan Kanawade. Cactus Pears is about a 30-year-old city dweller who returns home to the countryside of Western India to participate in a 10-day mourning ritual of his father. And it's there that he bonds with a local farmer who is trying to stay unmarried. As the mourning ends and he prepares for his return, he must decide the fate of his relationship, born under this duress. I think this movie is so sweet and so tender and just kind of coated in this yearning, this ache. And it is also interwoven with grief and this weird suffocation that one gets when they return home to a place that maybe didn't allow them to fully be themselves. It's meticulous and quiet, and sometimes that's to the film's detriment, but for the most part, I found this to be a really lovely and moving film. I kept thinking of the Taylor Swift lyric, "There's an ache in you, put there by the ache in me," and like I feel like that really encapsulates this movie. It's these two people who kind of just ache for each other and ache for a world where that is possible. Busan Bingerkar, he is our lead. This is his first feature film. He's terrific in this. He does some really great physical work. You can just feel the tension. You can feel him trying so desperately to just make himself smaller and smaller as time passes in this place. And there's some really lovely moments where we see that melt away and he's finally able to just kind of be. I don't know how else to say it. It's just so lovely. I can't wait to watch this again. I really hope a lot of people get to see this. I think it's a really special little queer gem. I gave that one 4 stars and a big fat heart on Letterboxd. Finally, my number one film of the festival is a film called Sorry Baby. You may have heard of it if you're on film Twitter. A lot of people were raving after this one premiered. I saw a lot of reactions and it convinced me to add this to my already packed lineup. This is a directorial debut from Eva Victor, who also wrote and stars in it. The logline for Sorry Baby is this: something bad happened to Agnes, but life goes on, for everyone around her at least. When a beloved friend visits on the brink of a major milestone, Agnes starts to realize just how stuck she's been and begins to work through how to move forward. This movie kind of sort of broke me. It was like one of those movies I was watching and I was just like, oh, I'm crying. Hi. It's a measured, patient heartache of a film that is also disarmingly funny and beautiful. There's moments where you're kind of sitting in the aftermath of bad things, but characters are being funny and making you chuckle a little bit, and you're kind of like, should I be laughing right now? I think Eva Victor is a quiet storm in front of and behind the camera. She's got such a great eye for visual storytelling and does very simple things that like kind of speak volumes. Just her performance, like we're watching Agnes try and grapple with a painful piece of her life as the world moves on around her pretty unaffected. It's quiet, but we can watch the pain kind of just seep into the cracks of her life in little ways. And what I love about this story is it really shows how even the most regular things can be altered in the aftermath of something happening to you. But like in the grand scheme of things, while your insular world is screeching to a halt, the rest of the world simply cannot stop with you. And it's jarring. There are still milestones to be had. There are still people to see and moves to make and joy to be found. What I loved about this movie is how it handles the trauma, but also doesn't shy away from the other things that can interrupt the trauma, like joy, like lighthearted laughter, like these major milestones. And I love how a lot of the shots were kind of framed like we were looking in on moments and we had to be invited in to witness them more closely. I said Eva Victor gives a terrific performance, but Naomi Ackie is also incredible in this. She's got such a warm presence and perhaps the kindest eyes I've seen in the last however long. Like every time she like looked up at the camera, I just felt like I was gonna be okay. Just like a beautiful, soft, quiet performance, and I loved it. Also, Lucas Hedges is in this. He doesn't have a ton to do, but it's always nice to see him on screen. I really liked his presence here as well. This movie was like a really exciting thing. I really hope it has a life after this. It's a really promising debut. Such a strong vision, such a strong language and voice. And while it's simple, its themes certainly don't feel simple, and it doesn't shy away from that. I ended up giving that one 4.5 stars. I adored it, and I will not be shocked if it makes my year-end list. I really don't. I want it to hang in there. That's a wrap on Sundance 2025. Let me know if you were able to check out anything from the festival, or let me know what you're most excited to see as more of these films get picked up and distributed to wider audiences. As always, make sure you do all the things you're supposed to do with a YouTube video. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and I will see you on the next one. Bye. Hello?